Welcome to AP Calculus AB video for skill number 106. I can determine if a function is odd, even, or neither. Alright, so the trivia question today is, we have learned that this is called the stylobate, the name of our unit, stylobate, but the gentleman shown in the picture is resting his feet on what we'll call the bottom step. What is the bottom step? So not where he's resting his feet, but the bottom step of a Greek temple. Alright, for skill 106, we'll start our notes on page 106A, and this is a really short skill. A function, y equals f of x, is considered an even function in x if f of negative x is equal to f of x. And it's considered an odd function if f of negative x is equal to negative f of x for all the x's in the domain. So what odd and even tells us very simply is the graph of an even function is symmetric about the y-axis. So what I've got here is a couple examples. The y equals x squared, that shows symmetry. Y equals the absolute value of x. Other functions might be like y is a constant, that shows even symmetry. You might have a function where the graph like comes down and goes up and then back down and up, though I drew it poorly. That shows symmetry as well. So odd functions show symmetry about the origin, and this is a little bit harder of a concept to understand, but if you can imagine taking one quadrant of the graph and then rotating it 180 degrees, you'll get the other quadrant of the graph. So your x's change from positive to negative, and then your y's change from positive to negative for an odd function. So the real skill in the lesson is not noticing it graphically, but being able to show it algebraically. So we'll take a look at that on the next page. Determine if f of x is odd, even, or neither. And so the way I typically will pursue this is I check to see, does f of negative x equal f of x, or does it equal negative f of x? And I check one or both of those. So in the first example, I took the function and I said, does f of x equal f of negative x? So I plugged negative in for all the values, and I found that it wound up being the exact same thing as the original function, so I was able to conclude that it was even, and I could stop there. If you notice, all powers are even if you count 0 as an even power. So that's very common that if you see only even powers, you're going to get an even function. Not necessarily always true, but it is pretty common. So, especially with polynomials. In the next example, we have what looks to be mostly odd powers, so we might be clued in that it's an odd function, possibly, though this root kind of throws a kink in there. So let's check it out. Take the function, we see if f of negative x is equal to the original function, and we find that it does not equal it, so we know it's not even, and in fact it's also not the same as if we put a negative value in front of it. If we did that, we would have negative x to the 7th plus 3x cubed minus root x, which is just slightly different than what we found. So it is neither odd or even. If we look at the third example, we have a fractional power, and we can write that different ways, and I like writing it as a root, and we ask ourselves what happens when we plug negative x in for the variable, and we arrive at the same thing. So we have an even function, and if I remember right, the graph of this looks something like that, which shows even symmetry. And for the last example, I have a root and then also a power function, and I plug negative x in, and I find that it is not even, but it is odd, because if we took negative f of x, we would get negative fifth root of x plus x to the seventh, which is what we found over here. So we know it's an odd function. For the skill test, you should be able to determine if a function is even or odd, both graphically and then also algebraically. All right, this concludes videos for skill 106. I can determine if a function is odd, even, or neither. And the trivia question was, if this is the stylobate of a Greek temple, what is the bottom step called? And the correct answer is stereobate.